My name is Brett Amory, and I'm an artist living in Oakland, California. I'm getting ready for a show at Fort Wayne Museum of Art. I was out there in March documenting for this project, and I made 8 large paintings and one pretty big 30-foot installation for the show. And the show is inspired by my time spent in Fort Wayne. Different places and some of the people I encountered while I was there, and there's historical elements to the show as well as things that are happening now in the world we live in and current events. And the show is basically just my time spent there and the experience, my experiences while I was there and what I was inspired by. So Fort Wayne was awarded an All-American City title, so parts of the installation are somewhat about the ideas of what we consider to be All-American, and if the idea of being All-American ever really existed, what it looked like, if it did exist. This body work is somewhat of a departure from the work I'm known for, which is the Waiting series. I decided to end that series last year. So this body work they're not literal depictions of particular places. It's inspired by a range of places that I encountered while I was in Fort Wayne and the 5 days that I spent there. So I feel like these paintings, they're not literal depictions of one particular place or one particular person. It's they're more collages and montages of different experiences and people and places. So there's more room for interpretation, for the viewer to come up with their own ideas of what they're about. And what they're about to me is there's multiple points of perspective and points of reference. Well, some of the work is about particular places, but the overarching historical relevance to the place and how it ties into Fort Wayne. So for instance, the Embassy is a theater in Fort Wayne. It was a destination for a lot of performers when they're traveling. A lot of these big name performers, Bob Hope and Duke Ellington or Louis Armstrong, Doris Day would stop through Fort Wayne and perform at the Embassy. And it's gone through ups and downs, and I think in the 70s they tried to demolish it, and there was a fight to save it because they have a pipe organ. And that was one reason why they wanted to save it, but the guardians of the pipe organ and some other, I guess, locals, part of the community, fought to save it, and it landmarked it. So the painting I included in the show is it's a nod to Fort Wayne, but it's a nod to the pipe organ. It's a real pipe organ in the theater called Miss Page. And this guy, Buddy Nolan, was one of the guardians of the pipe organ, and he maintained the organ, for years. So he's in the painting, and then some of the people that performed are in the painting. So that's one place that I felt inspired to make art about. And then there's these vets picket in front of the courthouse every 3rd Saturday of the month. So I talked to a few of those guys. So one of the paintings, Folly, is about them and what they stand for and how they're out there every Saturday doing their duty, picketing, about the multiple wars we have going on. And so that's a nod to what they do and what they stand for. I spent 5 days in Fort Wayne. I'm by no means a local. I haven't lived there. I don't have much history there. I didn't know much about Fort Wayne before I went. I did a show there at the museum. I was in a group show last year, and that was the first time I had ever been to Fort Wayne, Indiana. This show is from an outsider's perspective. I'm a tourist. the hardest challenge for me was to find places of interest that really tell the full story of Fort Wayne, and it's hard to do that if you're an outsider and you're a tourist to the place. Well, I've been doing, the Waiting series. I did that series from 2001 till 2015, and that's about, everyday life. And then from, just those mundane moments that we all kind of look over. And then from that series, I started a 24 series where I'd go to different cities and spend a month in each city and find 24 places, and each place is that represent neighborhoods and are iconic or have historical relevance to the city or the neighborhood that they existed in. And then once I found the place that fit the series, I would assign an hour to the place and go back and shoot video for the assigned hour. So the show, the 24 shows would have video and installation, photography and painting and found object. And the idea is to give the viewer an experience of the city that they live in. And I did 24 San Francisco and 24 New York, 24 London. But then, I started doing installations, and the installations the few that I did were based on different places in these cities that I would document, and they're primarily about mom and pop, the disappearance of the mom and pop business, family-run business. So when I did the installation for the group show back in August of last year for Fort Wayne Museum, it was a piece on gentrification. It was a bodega from San Francisco, and parts of it were from New York that were put together. And it's just a kind of a social commentary on what's happening, the disappearance of these places in major cities. I've been living in the Bay Area for 20 years, and I've seen it change more in 2 years than the 20 years that I've been here. And a lot of that has to do with different industries coming in, and the increase in rents and commercial rents, and people are getting pushed out. So I think just that kind of approach to art making is relevant to this show. I took the same approach as far as the documentation and the stuff that I'm inspired by. I feel like these places, I'm not necessarily looking for a specific place, but these places kind of jump out and they dictate, or they kind of grab me. So the approach hasn't really changed from the 24, the Waiting series. It's just the way I'm going about making the work. There's different influences as far as how I want to make art today versus how I wanted to make it a few years ago. And all that's inspired by new influences and what I like in the practice of making art. As far as contemporary painting or modernism, and so yeah. I mean, this show is dedicated to Fort Wayne and the people that live in Fort Wayne. It's a show about them and their city. It's a very small outsider's perspective of Fort Wayne, but it's a show in Fort Wayne about Fort Wayne and the people that live there. I'm from Chesapeake, Virginia, so it reminds me a lot of where I'm from. It's very compared to being in the Bay Area, San Francisco, where it's a little bit more pretentious. It's refreshing to be somewhere where it's people a little bit more down to earth, and it reminds me of going back home to Virginia.